So this is a panel that we put together to talk about customer success, and I will let my fellow panelists here introduce themselves in one moment. And then what I did is I kind of pulled out different things I thought were interesting from some of the presentations throughout the day today for us to kind of talk a little bit about. I'm Jamie Bertasi, President and COO of Totango. At this point, I've pretty much met everybody, I hope, and if not, come say hi to me, because I would like to meet you. And Morgan, you want to start on your end?
Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan Courtney. I head customer success at a gig economy company called TaskRabbit, where we help people like you access services around the home, like furniture assembly, mounting, etc. And so primarily our company manages the independent contractors on the platform. That's what our team does.
All right, hello everybody. My name's Annie Stefano. I'm currently with Growth Molecules. We're a customer success consulting company. We help maximize your CS service and support team and become a revenue engine and make real big impact through factional leadership. I personally get the best part, in my opinion. I head the education piece, so I get to certify all your teams and teach them the fundamental skills through being a customer success manager and just wow your team. Before that, I was a director of CS. I helped start up an ed tech company, and I had been through a few other ones and led a team of unicorns or full cycle CSMs and through renewals.
Hi everybody, my name is Quezada. I'm the head of customer success for Aruba Networks. For those of you guys that may not be aware, Aruba Networks is part of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. We do a lot of the networking and edge side of the house, so everything from Wi-Fi switching as well as software and security. My group actually focuses on the SaaS side of the business. So if you guys are aware, HPE is going through this transformation of moving all of our product lines to as a service. And so my team is focused on building out customer success for that, but I also consider my team one of the chief transformation agents of the company, right? Driving really that whole shift of how we look at customers differently. So aside from just customer success, we also own all the back end side of the house, the data analytics, voice of the customer and all that other stuff as well.
So we have here in the panel kind of three interesting scenarios, because we have a gig economy company with Morgan, we have a customer success consultant, and then we have kind of an older styled company that started, in the kind of on-prem world that's going through transformation to becoming a truly SaaS-based company over here for HPE. So it should be interesting. Okay, guys, so here's my first observation comment from today. One of the presenters put up a quote from the Harvard Business Review from 2017, but I really loved it, so I must ask you for your opinion. 81% of customers will attempt to take care of an issue themselves before really talking to a human being, right? And that really the general idea being that no one wants to talk to somebody. They actually just want to be able to get their job done, whatever their job might be. So do you believe that? Do you think it's still current? It's from 2017. It's 2022 now. What are your thoughts?
So I'll start off. Quick poll of hands. How many of us started in the support side of the house? Yeah, I expected that. So I also started.
Wait, you expected, was that a lot or a little?
No, I think it was a good breakout. So, a lot of folks in customer success either come from the services side of the house or business side of the house, right? Me also being a former support person, I would say that our customers will always try to Google it first, right? And so when I used to run TAC, one of the things that we always made sure is that we indexed our knowledge base to be made available through Google. And so one of the things that we do also as part of what we're doing from a digital perspective is to keep an eye on what's happening on TAC and figuring out what the top trends are and figuring out a way to go include those digital kind of proactive messaging into our install base to prevent those tickets from coming in.
Morgan, what do you guys think? What do you see over at TaskRabbit? I mean, is there a way for them to actually get a hold of a human?
Yeah, well, that's what we do. That's our bread and butter. So, no, I absolutely agree. I think, so our independent contractors, a lot of them, they start on the platform, they had no real human support other than contacting customer support to ask questions. Why am I not getting enough work? I want more work. How can I find it? And they were providing answers to the extent they could, but they weren't looking and they weren't analyzing the individual taskers' accounts the way that we are now able to. But so it is a mix, right? So absolutely, I think taskers want to figure this out for themselves. There are lots of tasker communities, so they're actually asking each other. We are facilitating that. We also manage virtual communities for taskers to answer their own questions. But what we are trying to make sure that they all know is, yeah, maybe you figured it out by yourself in the past, but if you want to talk to someone, we will tell you what's going on with your account. We will give you advice that you can action on immediately that's going to help you make more money tomorrow, today. And so, yes, absolutely, they're continuing to try to solve that problem, but we're providing them educational resources, plus the support center and other means, plus we have humans who are there to provide personalized guidance for each person, if they want it.
So I, early on in my career, that was not that long ago really, but I worked with the airlines, right? I think some of you guys have heard me tell this story. And I had many airline customers. And American Airlines was my customer when they came out with the first check-in machine, automated check-in machine at the airport where you scan your boarding pass. And and I remember the story very vividly because it made such a mark. And they put the machines into the terminals thinking no one will ever use these things. No one wants to actually use a machine to check in for an airline. They all want to line up and talk to the human being, the nice ladies behind the counter, right? But what they quickly realized was that there were lines for the machines because no one wanted to talk to the ladies or men behind the counters who were potentially having a bad day, right? And they just didn't know what they were going to get, right? Whether it was going to be slow, it was going to be fast, or what the problem was. So the beauty of the machine, and we've seen this with the ATMs too, right? That's transformed banking, is that you know what you're going to get, so you can get it done faster. So, it's interesting, and you do see this as a theme, like throughout the day-to-day, right? What did you happen to think about this one, Annie?
Well, for me, working in education technology, our end users were classroom teachers. Time was precious. Administrators didn't have enough time in the day. So in our experience, it was really important. Like you had said, we needed a really solid support system. We needed documentation better than ever. When chatbot and AI was coming back into play, that was a huge game changer. So having that digital engagement before it was even dubbed that at the time, and having those one-to-manys throughout the journey to really make it work so that they didn't have to call and they didn't have to, in the middle of their day, come out was a huge thing for us. We saw an instant change when we paid attention to that.
Yeah, it's super interesting because you do see that there's this theme for every single person you talk to in CS these days, which is they're trying to figure out the digital journey and then layer the human touch in on top of that in whatever is appropriate for them. I don't know if many of you guys were here earlier when Morgan was on stage talking about her ratio, but her CSMs have between 1,000 and 4,000 taskers or customers or accounts that they're working with. So, for you guys using digital with that, maybe give a little bit more about how you're handling the high touch in that scenario.
Yeah, so just to put a finer point on it, for those of you who are not familiar with TaskRabbit, it is a platform where we have two kinds of customers. We have clients who come to the platform, and then we have independent contractors who use our platform to find work. So we're really working with them, and we have a lot. It's actually 1 to 5,000. Each of our Tasker Success Managers manages, and that's a lot, right? That's a lot of people. You can't give them all the individual attention. But the other thing is that they don't all necessarily need or want individual attention, right? They reach out to us if they're having an issue, if they want more information. And so that really allows us to offer high-touch programs to everyone via digital touch, right? We're reaching out to them to say, hey, here's what you can take advantage of. You can do it if you want. If not, here's a lot of other information. So we reach out to our taskers in a very hyper-segmented, hyper-targeted way. We know if you haven't tasked in the last week. We know if you used to make a lot of money or you're not making money anymore. We know where the jobs are, and if you're not making any money right now, we're going to tell you, hey, go opt into this new thing. It's the summer in New York City. Guess what? Moving is really hot right now. You should jump in and make some money. And we're doing all of that via in-apps and push notifications, because obviously we are an app-based product. And then we also do that via emails through Totango. So some of those are triggered, and a lot of them are also ad hoc. But we want to reach people where they are when they need that information. So we really leverage the digital touch.
Great. One of the other themes I think we heard from a number of presenters today was to really focus on the moments that matter in the journey. Right? I think there's a lot of discussion about the journey mapping is pretty extensive. It takes a while. There's a lot going on, depending on whether you have a very simple product portfolio or very complex. And you've got to start somewhere with the things that really make the most impact on the customers. So I think it's so easily said, but how do you figure that out? How do you know what are the moments that matter, and how do you prioritize them?
wants to say.
I have a pretty good example of something we did at the early onset of our program. And one of the CSMs actually here in the room who did this. So when we first started going after this, I actually ordered a bunch of equipment through a local reseller and hid our corporate email addresses because I wanted to see what was all the communication that customers were getting. This is at the very beginning. And I asked them to set up the equipment as if they were a customer. And our TAC group was across the hall. And the one thing I told them is they cannot walk across the hall, right? If they have a problem and they don't understand, I need them to pick up the phone and call TAC. And I asked them to document the entire process and also tell me how they were feeling throughout the process, right? So not just tell me like what made sense, what didn't make sense, but did it seem like you were happy, you were frustrated, right? Like at what point did you just hit a wall? And every one of my CSMs, especially the early CSMs, had gone through that process. And that is actually how we actually created our first kind of digital engagement journey map, is understanding we knew that documentation was a problem, so how could we use the digital models that we had to proactively engage with customers and maybe change the narrative. It's like, we know you're gonna run into this problem, so let's get in front of it and say, here's things that you need to do to avoid these things. And so that's something that we've kind of embedded into our DNA since we've been going. It's something that we'd like to do at least once every year. And so that's the way that we were able to kind of uncover those moments that mattered.
So you almost might call it a different industry, mystery shopping.
That's right. That's right.
I've always wanted to be a mystery shopper. On my end, what really changed the game for us to better understand the story of the customer and really get those journeys looking aligned and helping us help our organizations and our customers was we actually asked them, I know that sounds crazy, but you all have talked about it in the sessions all throughout the day. What we ended up doing is we did network meetings, bringing the users to us, the teachers, the administrators, and while we had some things in mind, because you know we all do, we all have a strategy, whether you like it or not, right? But we actually let them show us what they were doing and how they were doing it, and we also asked to go into their environment. Kind of like mystery shopping, leaving them alone but wanting to see it in action, and that really made a difference too. In the long run, we ended up growing our user communities from just doing a few in Southern California for doing over 25 in a year across the country, doing them 3 times a year. So it actually really helped to invite product and sales and really get to know them, and then we would tailor and tweak the journey along the way because we were seeing how they're using their products in the seasonality of, for us, the school year. So a little bit different than a traditional business year. But it really changed how we looked at the journey and how we could support them in the long run.
Yeah, so we do some very similar kinds of things. So I would say we both use qualitative and quantitative data. So we're talking to taskers all the time. We're on the phones with them. We're doing tasker socials. We're meeting them in person, and they're telling us their pain points. They are very forthright about things, and so we take copious notes and we bring that back, and we integrate that into how we understand the journey. But we also obviously integrate that into product to try to solve those things. But then we also look at the quantitative, right? And so we could see very easily in our funnel, how many people do we bring on board? How many of those people actually go on to do a task? How many of those people do 10 tasks? How long do they stay on the platform, right? This is all very evident in the data. We know how much people are making and how long they stay. And so then that's when we start to see the drop-offs. And when you see the drop-offs, yeah, that's some friction, and that's something that we need to address, and we can build those. Those are some of the key moments in a tasker's journey. And then the other thing I'll say is something that maybe some of you are familiar with. It's a term called dog fooding, where you eat your own dog food. Doesn't sound very tasty, but it's really important for all of us to be users of our own product, right? So this whole walk a mile thing, which you described, right? Really experiencing what a customer experiences is really important. So at TaskRabbit, we're all clients as well. We regularly hire taskers, and we experience any friction points and also high points from the customer perspective. And then everybody also needs to sign up as a tasker, so we all feel the pain of the registration flow, right? So we try to figure out, okay, where are some of the things that we can do better? And then I'm going to shout out one of my colleagues who's here today, Ashley Jones, who is our Tasker Success Manager for Northern California and other states in the West, who also, went even further. And she is an active tasker on the platform, and she has gotten herself into some really fun situations, doing some cleanings in Berkeley, California that were huge and unexpected, and she had a lot of feedback, right? And brought that back into the product and to make us better. And so that's something that we all should do. It's something that employees at our company are wanting to do more. I want to do more too, and actually get out there and do some tasks and really feel, what does it feel like, Dog fooding is so important for us to understand our own product.
I totally agree. So if you probably all realize this already, but of course we at Totango use our own product. We run customer success at Totango through Totango and have all the same questions and educational points and all the learnings the same as everyone else here. So in the Totango team, hopefully super knowledgeable. And the other example of dog fooding that I think is fun is I also had a customer, FedEx, for a long time, and they actually shut down at Christmas time. And every single person from the headquarters has to go work in the warehouses, because of course Christmas is when everyone's shipping all of their packages. And so the headquarters employees are the ones loading the planes and doing everything that needs to be done because they have to scale up. So I think it's great. I totally agree with you. Really, to really understand. Super hard otherwise. My next thing here is customer success. Is this a team or is this a mindset? What is this? And also, can one team truly own the customer experience at a company? Because again, it's such a broad topic, right? So there's a team called customer success, there's these concepts called customer success, there's a concept called the customer journey, another one called customer experience.
The most overly used cliche is customer success is a philosophy, not a team, right? And I feel like many of the leaders in this room have probably spent a lot of time evangelizing what customer success is and isn't. Now, if you imagine coming from Aruba, about 4 years ago, customer success didn't exist. It was a team of one. Now we have a team of like 50 people. And I think Aruba gets it. And we've been rewarded by being elevated within the company and being showcases about what customer success is. And then they say, great, now that you figured it out here, we want you to go and do it for HPE, 65,000 employees. So here we go again, right? And so
This is a big promotion, Carlos.
It's a big deal, yeah, a little bit. So to me, it's huge flattery for the team. But it's one of the things that I always say is when my team goes in, we basically have created this rinse and repeat framework. I have a journey mapping team, and we're part of the new service introduction and new product introduction flow. And so anytime a new product or services get created, it cannot go to market until my team's done the journey map for it. Right? And so that's huge because when we do the journey map, we bring in every delivery team that's going to touch that, and they understand what their role is and how they're accountable to the team next to them, right? And what's the requirements for exit. And so when we come up with those end-to-end journey maps and we go and identify the stakeholders, that's the customer success team, right? Pre-sales, professional services, customer success managers, renewal managers, tech. Right. So for me, I've always, 4 years ago, I drew on so I'm an old tech guy. I used to run global support for many years, and I actually drew on a whiteboard about 4 years ago, all the different roles, right? So everything from professional services to onboarding to training to support to renewals. And I kind of drew the little curly Q on top of it or the bracket, and I said, this used to be tech support, it's now customer success, right? And I'm like, this is where things are going, and gone are the days where you have VPs of tech support, right? I think that mindset needs to happen where it's really shifting from this entire group can't continue to be independent silos, which is what happens today. They'll have to be unified, and how you stitch the people working together in those experiences, if you do that well, that's the outcome of customer success.
I don't think I can follow that because I agree completely. Perfectly said. But I also agree and concur. It needs to be, it's a mindset. It's a philosophy. It may start where you're really honing in on working with your team. I know as a leader, I spent a lot of conversation, a lot of time. Every conversation led with customer first. That's who we looked at. That's what it was about. It could have been the smallest thing. It didn't matter. And coaching the team through that, especially team members who are new to CS. They're breaking in. They don't quite know. We did book clubs, professional development. We really soaked in making sure that they understood that they're that important, but so is every other team. The silos are dangerous. They create negative tension, because I would argue that positive tension can be helpful when you're trying to carve out and build and scale your company. But negative tension like that, where it's only owned by one team, really trickles a toxicity in your organization. And so you want to create a culture of CS is where we are owning customer success is by everyone. We may be the team that's going to measure it and carry its health and execute the post-sales journey, but we're all involved. And so that's truly important.
So I completely agree with everything both of you just said. The only thing I will say on top of that is that one thing that tech has learned is that you have to be customer-centric, right? You can't just build a thing and then hope people use it. You have to actually ask people, what are your pain points, and build to that. And I think that's something that, TaskRabbit as well has learned over time. I've been there for over 4 years now. And we can't just build a feature and then hope people use it. We need to actually listen to what people want and build that. Otherwise, adoption is really low. And we're not going to get the bang for the buck. And there's a lot of bucks that go into creating new features. I think we all can agree. So I would say absolutely. It's definitely a mindset. Everybody participates, and I'm really grateful because at least at TaskRabbit, the success team is integrated into all of the conversations we're having across the company. Whether it's with product design sessions, whether it's talking to customer support about what kinds of questions they are getting and how they might be able to answer some of those in a more comprehensive way. Whether it's the marketing team trying to figure out how do we market better to both clients and to taskers. So we are part of all of those conversations. It really is a whole team effort.
So then let me ask you this. Who do you think owns the journey? So at TaskRabbit, who owns the journey?
We own the journey.
Therefore, no one owns the journey. Sometimes,
we
everybody
own the
know
journey.
one, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We definitely own the journey. Actually, I'll call it one of my other colleagues, James here, who owns a large part of the journey, which is everybody who has done some work on the platform. Is what he is thinking about. No, we absolutely understand the journey. We own it. And so that's one of the reasons why we are pulled into these conversations, because we know what the pain points are. We know when people experience them. And then we are ultimately responsible for a lot of metrics of the tasker's performance. Are they generating revenue? Are they doing a good job? Are they actually showing up and executing? These are things that we as a team are responsible for at TaskRabbit. And so therefore, yes, we absolutely own that journey, and then we advise the rest of the company on where things would fall in that and how they might be helpful.
And Annie, for you, because I know you're consulting with other companies, giving them advice about what to do, what do you think is the typical ownership model for the customer journey from the companies you work with?
That's a great question. So typically what we see across all industries is that CS does own the journey. They have the most information, the most data to be able to communicate it clearly, to help break down those silos, to collaborate with other teams. Imagine that, right? Collaborate and partner with sales, collaborate and partner with product. They have the data behind them to kind of proof in the pudding, if you will, right? So we see a lot of the times that when we do things like mapping workshops and helping the teams really get down and dirty with the journey and really think about what's happening in each phase and who's involved, when we start to break down those pieces and partner with the other teams in the organization, it makes all the difference. So I would agree that it's definitely CS owned, but in partnership and collaboration with the other teams.
Great. Okay, let me ask you another question. So, Carlos, what do you think about this quote from one of our customers at the cab, who I won't name since he's not here to defend himself? But the other day, you were actually there, so you heard this. And the quote was, his goal is to kill the check-in. And for those of you who might not know what I mean, a little more context, the check-in being the cadence call. Right, so you have your customer success team is checking in with the customers and having cadence calls with the customers and so forth. So what do you think about the check-in? Is your goal to kill the check-in? Do you agree with that?
This is actually a very hot topic on our side of the house too, because we started digital first, right? So context, 96% of our customers are in the tech touch space. And we do swarm CSM models. And one of the things that we talk about is, look, we want to engage with customers, but we need to make sure that we're adding value during those conversations, right? And so one of the worst things, I mean, I always ask this question, right? How many of us answer the phone from a number we don't recognize during the day, right? So imagine that you have a digital-led engagement, a customer goes red, they may not know they're red, CSM calls, no one's going to answer, right? So when you finally get that customer on the call, the worst thing you're going to say, hey, I'm just calling in to check in, right? It's like, just going to hang up on you. It's like, hey, I'm calling to talk to you about your extended car warranty, right? It's no different, right? So I firmly believe that when you are going to have a conversation with a customer, one of the things that we do is we actually have a internal playbook where the CSMs actually do a little bit of education about the customer. So we know about what's going on. Is there a merger and acquisition that happened, some financial news, things like that? Has there been a change in leadership? Whatever it may be, to kind of build that relationship and say, oh, by the way, the reason I'm calling is because, you're here and folks like you should be here, and I think this is the things we should focus on. Do you have time to talk about it, right? So absolutely stay away from the check-ins. You can do that digitally. You can have customers opt in to check-ins, and with the video that we saw today, it's table stakes, right? So yeah, I would say definitely I agree. You don't want to have, these are not cheap resources. They should be doing more than calling in to check-in.
If I may add to that, we talk a lot about in our education programs at Growth Molecules and working with a lot of CS teams that if you're having a meeting just to have a meeting, we all know this, it feels awful. So don't do it. But also, too, you need to have a goal. You need to have the reason for being there, even if it's 15 minutes, some sort of outcome with them if you do have to have a meeting or that touch point, or it's going to make absolute no sense. They're not going to see value in anything you do. We talk about time to value all the time in our role. It's no different for our customers. And depending on industry, depending if it's an end user versus a stakeholder, the time is absolutely precious more than ever these days. So if you don't have that established, it doesn't matter what you say. And I also heard someone once mention, don't use the F word, don't ever say follow up. Because they're not going to answer you. They're not going to want the meeting. They don't want it. It doesn't resonate with them because if they're going to have a touch with you or a meeting or an experience or an interaction, they're absolutely not going to unless it's meaningful and worth their time. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
What do you think about the video idea, the video QBR and all of that the team was showing? I think, for any of you guys, that seems like that might be a great way to handle some of that communication and still achieve the personal touch, I think.
Yeah, it's actually really funny you bring that up because back there, I was telling her, oh my gosh, my prior team would absolutely be so in shock right now. I took a video to send it to them and tease them a little bit because it took a while to get them to consider making some sort of artifact or getting the data pulled in correctly. That's also part of it, right? Getting the right data to do what you needed. That took us a while, but when we did it, it kind of blew their mind. But they still had to do that artifact manually. So the fact that it's populating, I was nerding out in the back, and then being able to really execute it in a fun, engaging way, we were using other tools to do that in our tech stack. So I am blown away. I'm very excited for all of you to be able to use that. I think it's innovative. I think it's spot on, and it adds to that digital experience for sure.
What do you guys think, Morgan?
Yeah, I think that the video is transformative. I think it's really fantastic. And we strive to be a global company that operates locally, that's really personalized. And, I said this earlier, I'll say it again. I want every single independent contractor on our platform to not feel like they're just a number, that we see them, they are not anonymous. We are paying attention. We're there to support them as individuals who are trying to make money. And so the idea that we could have a personalized video that has really great data that's integrated into it, that is all about them, I think is a huge value add, and it will really go far in terms of showing the personalized attention and care we want to pay to all of our independent contractors.
Okay, we only have a minute left, so I'm going to ask you one question, and we'll go around. Everyone will say their answer really quick, okay? So I guess what I would ask is, what is the most interesting thing or maybe your biggest thing you've learned in CS this year?
This year. Can I use today, though? Because what I really felt was enlightening and I think kind of a mic drop for breaking down those silos, but then also when you're talking and speaking about CS, that the customer success journey is a product. I feel like that's such a bold statement, but it's necessary, because if we start thinking and acting about that, acting like that with that statement, I think those silos will be more easily broken.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm sure Guy is sitting out there somewhere nodding as well.
So I might take this in a little bit of a different direction, but it's Totango related. So we care a lot about churn. Ooh, everybody in this room cares a whole lot about churn. And one of the things that hit my desk the other day that I was really stunned by is we're trying to obviously reduce the churn of our taskers. We want to keep them on the platform. But before Totango, we didn't realize how many people might be coming back of their own accord. We just assumed if you hadn't done a task, if you hadn't billed in a certain amount of time, you were probably done. But it turns out that actually we have a lot of people who are very seasonal, who come back over and over again. And that is a revelation for us that I'm really grateful for the software for having helped us to see it, because it really helps us with our projections and kind of what we anticipate in terms of our supply model for our operations. So it was great to see that we can keep people coming back again and again. And now our next task as a team is, how do we increase that? How do we really push more? How do we identify those people and get even more people to come on back? Because it really helps us with a number of different problem sets that we have.
Carlos?
So the question was, what have I learned about customer success over the last year?
What's like your biggest revelation lately?
Well, for me, it's something that I've always said is I think that as customer success leaders, we should recognize what we are and what we're not, right? And I think that I personally feel like as CS leaders, we got to get really comfortable breaking glass, because I think that CS leaders have an opportunity at really driving the transformation of the company. When you think about a lot of the work that it takes to get the data that you guys are seeing on the screen for your CSMs, there's a lot of back-end work that happens that nobody takes credit for, right? And I always say, customer success is beyond the CSM. When you take a look at the CS ops team, my digital comms team, right, the voice of the customer team, how we get feedback in front of product management, a lot of that stuff doesn't show up with the label customer success. And so for me, I've actually been moving away from being called the customer success team at HPE, because I actually feel that we're more of the lifecycle management and strategy team. And a lot of the work that we do is actually changing the go-to-market strategy for a multi-billion-dollar global company. And so I look at a lot of CS leaders sometimes, and they sometimes fall into, succumbing to the pressure of sales and just becoming an extension of the sales team. And I think that we got to do a better job of representing really what the team is doing and recognizing that, yeah, it may not be related to churn right now, but no one else is giving you the product feedback that we're giving you right now. And so for us, over the last 3 years, we had a lot of criticism around, what value we brought to the company. And it took us 3 years to get to the point where people realized, yeah, for the last 3 years, we may not have run any upsell opportunity, but I'm the only one in the company that can tell you what our churn score is, NPS, an upsell is, right? Nobody else is tracking that. And so as demonstrated by the recent opportunity that my team has had now to expand to HPE, I was like, break glass. You got to break glass and not be afraid to really be the chief transformation officer of your company.
Awesome. Well, on that, I think we'll wrap up. Thanks, you guys, so much.